Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum podcast. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week it's another anime rundown of the current season, this being winter. So, as per usual rules, I'm probably a couple weeks behind of the uploads because I go via dub versions, and I don't want to spoil everything, but I have a spoiler warning just in case I do, if the talking points lead to that. So, spoiler warning, if you haven't seen these, or if you've seen them before, please don't spoil me of anything that happens later, like a couple weeks in advance, because I don't know. I'm mostly in the speculative mode of seasons, especially later in seasons, now that we're getting kind of the midway to the end. And take this as opinions of shows rather than definitive, oh my god, your tastes are good, your tastes are bad, general stuff like that, because I think we get overwhelmed in things of that nature. But anyway, not a lot has changed from the lineup, though I did drop a show, and I'll explain why. People might guess which one it is, but might be surprised. But who knows? We'll start with the ones that I'm obviously not going to drop, and that being the sequels. We'll start with the best one, which shouldn't come as a shock, the Apothecary Diaries, Season 2. So last we met Mao Mao and her weird stuff. They were slowly peeling back layers, but introducing the foreign caravan, and they were kind of alluding to the foreign envoys, and they were coming across this couple of weird scenarios that obviously they're going to build to something later. They're taking their time with this. I don't know if the foreign envoy thing and all of the major happenings right now are going to be like a full 24 episodes or just a 12, 13 episode arc, and then they'll build on another one, but they're taking their time and giving things time to breathe while still keeping up the momentum, because that's what they're good at, is managing the mystery stuff with Mao Mao's weird stuff with Jinshi and all her, fanatical fun. They've introduced the characters of the foreign envoy, the princesses or the queens, however they want to call them. And they've made it very clear that they're of the same standing of the major concubines, or at least that's what they want. The episode that I got to yesterday was about the Moon Fairy, and Mao Mao's attempt to coerce Jinshi into being the Moon Fairy. And it went about as well as expected, which is perfectly, because of course her plans always work, which is great. Mao Mao being able to be the one to solve the problems is always a good thing, because you never know what weirdness she comes up with. And she's able to explain it in a way that seems plausible, but otherworldly at the same time. She makes the otherworldly happen via scientific means in this, court political drama stuff. And the show is slowly building the idea that the envoys are, trying to get in with the emperor, and they're kind of pissing off the other people, but they're not trying to. They're just kind of worming their way into it, all that. And they're keeping all of the things at the vest. There's nothing like completely revelatory yet. They're doing a good job of slow building. Like, this is the first week the envoys even talked. So you got to see their personalities. It was a kind of a Caroline Justine thing from Persona 5, where one of them was the outgoing one of them was the more stately, just leave it alone kind of person. So I do appreciate that this show is taking the slow burn approach, because it's very easy to get bogged down in, hey, Mao Mao does a thing, do the thing. Where does it lead? Does it matter? It does. And I've given the show good enough benefit of the doubt to balance everything. It's the balance of everything and her reactions to everything, and, Jinshi's to an extent, that really make the show work. And they haven't had any signs of slowing down, which is great. My Happy Marriage Season 2. At last I talked they introduced Karuko Jinochi, and they gave her something to do, and then they didn't. They get rid of her. You know, it was to elevate the plot line of, oh my god, this new bad guy is after the main lead, and then how do you deal with this? And it's like, okay, it's fine, but when you're building this new character who's almost as good as everyone else, and you're doing this whole like misogyny angle, but she fights against it, and she just wants a friend, then you're just elevating. You know, I felt like they were elevating her to a standard of being, you know, Mayu's friend, and it's like, or is Miyu? Yeah, Miyu, I think. Her friend, and then they don't. And then they move on to something else because she gets attacked and Karuko gets blamed for it because she, you know, the new guy, Usui, has these like weird illusion magic things. And now he's, you know, forcing everybody to, you know, become political, and the gifted communion is like, everybody's lying to you, these grotesqueries are real and we'll prove it, and we'll, you know, it's kind of like, you know, everybody should become mutants because then nobody would be special or shit like that. But a way to get rid of the government. So they're trying to kind of fuck around with the current government regime and then get, you know, steal Miyu away because she has the dream sight, which she still hasn't really figured out how to use. So you're still trying to balance the romance subplot, you know, with all of the goings on of, now we have political intrigue, now we have super crazy supernatural shit, you know, all the moving parts are great, but I felt like Miyu as a character didn't have enough, like, friends, and it was like Karuko was being a friend, and then they're just like, no, you're off in this direction now, you're to blame for this thing, we won't kill you off, and you'll stay in the episodes, but you'll stay as kind of like, eh. And it was really disappointing because it's like, you need more than just the two main characters and the main bad guy. And a couple of characters don't really have a lot of charisma. So it's kind of tough to get the main character to break open. You know, we're into the second season and I'm still just kind of like, yeah, she's gotten better, but it's still kind of there. I had this problem with Honey Lemon Soda. I'm like, I don't need this character. I need growth. And Karuko was somebody to bounce off of that wasn't Kudo, which is good. You know, at least they gave us Kudo's sister again. She has charisma for days, so that's kind of neat since they're in this place, but they've only just developed that. I was kind of like, hey, you had a good thing going. Why don't you keep it? You know, it was almost one of those, like, we introduce a cool character and then we killed them off. Not quite that bad. She's still there. It's just shunted off to the background, so it's almost as bad. You know, but it's whatever. It's a disappointment, but I'll have to live with it. But as long as she's on the screen and doing friendly things, it's great. And besides, she's good in a fight, and you kind of need that. Let's see. Toilet Bound Hanako-kun Season 2. Biggest thing for the last couple of episodes, they introduced the clock keepers, and they dealt with that crap in the last update. But what they reveal is that Nene Yashiro has like a year to live? Something of that nature. Very unspecified. They didn't say what it was. They're probably not gonna say what it was, but now you have the fear of death. In the show that was very goofy, fantastical and whatnot, but now very grounded in this. Okay, she doesn't even know this. But the main characters know this, but they don't know how or why. And they're keeping it very close. And now you have this, like, very morose thing hanging over what was a comedy. And they go about this episode last week. It was called the Festival of the Boundary. They were doing like a school festival or a town festival thing that nobody could really go to. So they happened upon a different festival that everybody can go to, which was cool. It was that yokai kimono cool, like, horrors thing, because that's where the show shines, is blending that stuff in with its art style and going to these fantastical places and doing these things. But now that you add this extra gravitas to a character that was really kind of nothing but just a goofball, And the best is that she doesn't even know it. So it gives the 3 to 4 main characters something else to hang their hat on, because it's that like sword of Damocles that's just hanging there as proof that we're going to go in a more serious direction, even if, there are times when we do, but the show is like 80% comedy and 80% goofball, but it's done enough to warrant that we've been around these characters enough. Do you want to see them succeed or fail? They're now in that situation. I'm still worried about like what the revelation is, like what her powers are or aren't going to be, or what her illness is or isn't going to be. I don't know if they were going to go around that. I think it's one of those like, we'll keep it close to the vest until we really, really have to explain it. But it's that race against time narrative now that's kind of neat. When you introduce this whole clock keeper thing, you have that like, oh, this person can do this and do this and do this, and it's like, okay, what fantastical solution to a problem can you get to get her out of this? Or is the show just going to end right away? I would think this show is popular enough not to just end on that, but who knows? But still got a long way to go, I think. Going to the non-sequels now. Zenshu. I've said this is my favorite show, and it's staying that way. Well, last week's episode was one that needed to happen, could have happened earlier, and it's kind of interesting because it's mostly been about the isekai and her reactions to it and her power set and dealing with people. She just got over the whole hubris thing and learned to trust people. Hooray! Team friend work. This one was talking about how she grew to love the tale of perishing, why she gives it so much care, why she became an artist in the first place, and how it affected pretty much everybody she grew up with. And I believe like if people wanted this show, this weird girl doing weird artwork about this weird show and pissing off or influencing everybody else she meets, this was kind of a version of that I still think the show works as intended. And I believe the placement of this episode being like episode 7 or 8 or whatever was perfect, because we've grown to see Natsuko be likable and be an asshole at the same time, to the point where we're invested enough to know about her stuff. Because sometimes you'll get this like, this is the first episode, or this is the second, or this is the third. They waited until episode 7 to pull this. And I liked it because I know enough about what she's going through to invest in her as a person. And that's important because going through her journey's enough. And then I didn't really need to know her backstory, but it was good enough to know that like there were reasons that she did the things she did, and she was, an influential person in people's lives to whatever weird comedic extent it was, or to a more dramatic extent, because this show has really just blown past everything else this season. And it's not as good as like Apothecary Diaries or anything like that, but I get the feeling that unless they really, really freaking drop the ball, like they have a good story to tell and they have the good characters to tell it with. And, they could go any manner of directions. Like this could go into a series that could last a long time. This could be a series that's 12 or 13 episodes, we're done. And it doesn't feel off yet. I'm hoping they don't have to pull it's 2 episodes, let's finish this fucking thing now with a big bad, because that tends to happen with a lot of shows. They run out of steam in those last 2 episodes trying to tie loose threads together. There's still like 6 or 7 episodes, or 5 or 6 episodes left. So I'm waiting for the end here, and I'm gonna like it. Sakamoto Days is interesting, but I don't know. I don't hate it. I just know that it's in that, like, this is going to be what it is sort of phase. So I'm not as excited every week, because I know what it's going to be. It's going to be, here's a guy, let's introduce the guy or the girl, and we'll give him an episode or two, and we'll do some funny fight scenes and sight gags, but like, you're not expecting high art, you're not expecting low art, you're just kind of there. And in a good way, it's still very well made and funny, and I like it, and I like the cool idea of the Sakamoto thing, because they're doing enough with it still that it's funny, but like, this is what it's gonna be. I'm not gonna transcend and think it's just gonna get better unless they pull like a Dawn to Dawn and have an episode 7 like just waiting somewhere. I don't think it's gonna just get better or get worse. I just know what it is now. The episode with this character, what was his name? Heisuke Mashimo. This very, very poor, very, very stupid assassin who's got great sniper skills. And that's all he's good for. So they pull this like town lottery shoot 'em up paintball tournament thing, and Sakamoto is like, and his team are just dominant because of course they fucking are. And then it turns out Mashimo is hunting this guy for a bounty and shooting the shit out of this place. So he's got like the revolver ocelot powers of, with a sniper rifle. So he's revolver ocelot. Everything can ricochet because he can, and it blows up the entire shopping district. And, that funny gag. I think his gags are going to drive me a little after a while. I don't think he has the staying power as a character. He's not like, what was his name, Nagoya, where like you knew he was important and was either leading people on or being friendly or both. And he has way more intelligence and staying power as a character to, do things. This guy's there just to be a dork. But in a fun way. I think there's cool stuff you can do with a sniper. There's fun stuff you can do with his bird. It's Sakamoto Days. I'm not expecting it to go from super comedy to super dark, right? Unlike, say, Zenshu, which can kind of afford to do that whenever it wants to. So Sakamoto Days is fine. I'm not going nuts over it like I am Zenshu, though. Next one, I did that one. This one. I might actually like this more than Sakamoto Days just because of the tone. Ameku MD, Doctor Detective. The last episodes have, the last few episodes have been focusing on this curse. This, like, spontaneous combustion of different people who were, desecrating a grave. So Ameku finally kind of figures things out in this episode, and they do a good job of, and I'm going to talk about this when I get to Inspector. It always seemed like Inspector was telling you what was happening rather than solving the mystery. Because it always felt like with Inspector, like they knew how the thing was solved already, and they're just backtracking and telling you, oh, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened, and it's like she knew, like Kotoko had the answer already. At least with Takao and Kotori, they seem to like go in the process of things happening, and stuff is happening to them and they're still reacting to it. You're doing the Sherlock Holmes thing of, oh, here is this explanation and this explanation and this explanation. You're still trying to catch the culprits. So you're still in the process. And I think that's a better approach to this sort of thing. So I definitely approve of it. And again, having a character central to this that is, an engaging personality, it's a big deal. And I've been, a lot of these shows are about characters. I don't really care what happens to people unless I have a rooted grasp in the characters. If I find a character that I'm liking, I want stuff to happen to them, but I want to see what their reactions to these situations are. And Takao is the main character, and she's reacting to, oh, this weird spontaneous combustion thing. There's got to be a scientific explanation, or this has got to be a mad bomber thing, or whatever the fuck. She figures all of that stuff out. And the coincidences don't just happen either. She's able to kind of tie everything back and still make things make sense, and she solves the case. And this was kind of the first big one. So this is where we've introduced the characters. Now we have to have some actual stakes. And it doesn't feel like she solves it too soon. She doesn't feel like she's overwhelmed either. And it doesn't feel like she just doesn't know anything. She's giving enough, the show's giving you enough breadcrumbs, and you might even figure it out if you're, into this sort of stuff. I'm not really a mystery novel guy. I'm more of that. I was in anatomy classes, so the doctor stuff that she's talking about, like, I know this stuff, or at least have familiarity with it. So I'm like, okay, I can understand why she would be talking with this verbiage and what it all means and how it makes sense. And that's one of my, that's one of the things I latch on to. So Ameku continues to be really good as a show in its own different way. But now we're getting to the one I dropped, and this is the one that annoyed me, because the other ones I was dropping after like an episode or even 5 minutes in or whatever, and this sucks, because this was like 5 episodes or 4 episodes. It was Guild Receptionist, and I was liking it, but I always kind of veered onto the fence still. And this was a death by 1,000 cuts. This reminded me of Demon Lord Retry when I was kind of watching that last season. Was a lot of the dialogue was very samey. A lot of the character interactions were very samey, and it didn't feel like it wanted to try very hard. And what sucks is that this could have tried harder. And the main character, again, and a lot of these are female main leads. There is a thing. I have said that before. I think female main leads don't always get the same treatment that male leads do in some cases. So getting a cool female lead can sometimes, give me a little bit extra motivation sometimes to keep with the show if they're interesting. But that she was the linchpin of the show. And yet also the worst part, Alina was just too annoying with the same fucking dialogue over and over. Because I'll give you an example. The last couple of episodes, and this is where I was dropping it, were, okay, we finally have this big bad that's actually somewhat of a threat. Even in the show where it's like, I can kill a boss and do whatever because of overtime. But it's like, okay, the other people that were introduced, I don't have a fondness for them. I don't care. They're just adventurous people. They're not saying anything special, but they're getting hurt. They're actually showing people getting hurt. The stakes are kind of raised in this, comedic show, but her motivations are dumb because it's not even about saving the people. It's about, oh my God, I'm losing overtime. Oh my God, I need to kill you because she would overuse that phrase. And I was going along fine with it. But then you're trying to raise the stakes and show off this monster that was, okay, this thing's pretty fucking devastating. But she can one-shot it, or at least do some damage. But she was also getting hurt too. So it's like, okay, now it's starting to pick up, starting to work. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe we're onto something. But then her killing blows are, you're not going to stop me because of overtime, and you die. And then she does the panning sequence where it, like, right at the tail end of the episode, it's like, oh my God, my overtime is never going to happen again. Like, shut up about overtime! Like, you can see why I just got sick of it. Because the banter and the guild stuff was what was keeping it to me, but you're going into Kingdom Hearts territory. I know I softened my stance on Kingdom Hearts, but the Kingdom Hearts dialogue, like, it was reminiscent of light and darkness. You cannot come up with other words for light and darkness, but light and darkness. You can't come up with other words for Alina to say than overtime. I'm sick of overtime. I just want this done so I don't have to work anymore. Like, could you give her something to do? Could you give her something to say? And I know it's like, it reminded me of, oh God, it was a few years ago. It was this show I dumped in like 45 seconds. It was something called This Maid I Just Hired is Really Suspicious. And the whole goal of the show was to say, oh, this maid is super suspicious. I wonder what she's gonna do. oh my god, she knows a thing. She's super suspicious. You can see why I'm annoyed, right? You can have it in your title, but not be your entire thesaurus. And I it sucks because I wanted to like this, even if it was a junk food. Because I wasn't really killing it, but I was living with it and I was liking it because it had something there that I could latch onto. She was bitching out customers. Customers were being dicks. I've lived through that as a person of retail. Some people are assholes. I even had a situation like this week when I was working in one of my jobs. This shit happens. It's relatable. Give me more of that, but do it in a way that doesn't, have the same fucking verbiage. And then when you're trying to do something important, have her say, I'm just going to kill you. I'm just going to do a thing. No, you have to tie it back to her fucking title of overtime. 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 I'm like, God, this could have been like life lessons of Uramichi on One-san. It's like very Clerks-esque, very subtle, very just, we hate customer service. That's what I was hoping for, and instead I just get this schlock. So I dumped it. I didn't really want to dump it because there was things that I was enjoying, and I think that's what pisses me off even more. But, by and large, there's still a hit rate. I've got a good amount of shows. I mean, I've got more shows this season than I did last season, so I'm still in a happy mode. But when you got to drop something that you were invested in, it's that sunk cost fallacy. It's like, I don't want to, but you suck. So life happens, right? Shit happens. I've got enough good shows that I don't need one bad one lingering on. So I dumped it. But that'll do for this week. And that was my rundown of all the anime stuff. So, what does it look like going forward? Persona 5 Strikers, Nick. Oh, actually, no. Persona 5 Strikers, I did the episode, so that'll be next week's episodes that I upload. Makene, Too Many Losing Heroines. So that one is very good, and I'm glad to talk about it. Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake. The episodes are uploading and should be done by next week, so I'll have a lot to talk about when I get to that next month. It'll be Inspector, so very similar to Ameku Detective, but in a different way, and its own different way of kind of dealing with mysteries. And then I decided on Final Fantasy IX at the end of April. Like, I could just spout good stuff about Final Fantasy IX for days, and I get the chance to do it. I think it's like one mainline Final Fantasy game per year, or like one every 11 or 12 months or something like that. So I'm like, this is the chance again to get back into Final Fantasy. Woo! I'm happy with that. But that'll do for this week, and I'll see you next time. Citizen Strife, signing off.